Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the QUADRISE Fuels investor presentation relating to the full year results. Throughout this presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. These will be available via your Investor Meet Company dashboard. I'd also like to remind you that this presentation is being recorded. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Mike Kirk, Chairman, and Jason Miles, CEO of QUADRISE Fuels International PLC. Good afternoon, guys.
Good afternoon, Paul. Thank you very much. And welcome everyone to what is now our second presentation using Investor Meet Company. Thank you again for your very positive feedback about the use of this platform last time. And as you know, we're also going to be using it for our post-AGM update to you as well. Just very briefly, we're going to do the same as last time. So it's a presentation that we're going to try and get through at a reasonable lick to enable you to ask questions. We're going to focus on the progress that we've made in some of our key projects, which we are sort of active on at the moment. I'm not going to make any excuses for the fact there's a lot of similarity between this presentation, the one we gave around 6 weeks ago, and in part that's because we think we did a good job in giving you a very good update prior to going into the close period. One of the big changes we'll get on and talk about just as we go through the introductions now. I'm not going to spend any time on the disclaimer. I think most of you know myself and Jason, but just very briefly, I'm a former partner at Cazenove, an energy sector advisor and an advisor into utilities businesses. I joined QUADRISE just over around 5 years ago now, and by background I'm a chemical and nuclear engineer with an MBA in finance. And I think, again, just by way of introduction to Jason, I think one of the more material things is where Jason is presenting from at the moment. Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Greetings from Morocco. Jason Miles, I'm the CEO of QUADRISE. Joined QUADRISE just after listing in 2006. I'm a chemical engineer by training, with experience that basically stemmed from BP when I joined BP just after university, and then I was working together with a project with Petroles de Venezuela to commercialise a fuel of which 60 million tonnes of our emulsion was sold worldwide. So that's my background. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go through these quite quickly because I think the meat of it is an update on where we are on projects. But just basically, what is the issue? And the basic issue is both producers of crude oil and of refined oil products are making too much heavy oil. And the recent IMO 2020 regulations has further reduced demand for heavy oil products. On top of that oversupply, heavy fuel oil sells at a discount to crude oil. So they're making too much of it and it loses them money as they're making it. And principally the reason for that is because they've got to use expensive distillates to be able to thin down the heavy residues to be able to make them flow and be able to be used as a fuel. They're also quite polluting in their use, and they consume a lot of energy to burn and to handle because intrinsically they are quite, we're trying to get rid of a very heavy product by diluting it down with these valuable distillates. Our technology works by eliminating the need for, in a sense, wasting these diluents. So we replace them with water and around 1% of additives. That enables the refinery at very low cost and very quickly to actually save those distillates, improve its refinery yield and profitability very significantly. And the MSAR that is produced, unlike heavy fuel oil, is actually easy to burn. It burns much more like a gas. It's got some very significant environmental benefits as well as some price benefits. And we're in a market where we don't have any direct competitors. We are using proven emulsion and bitumen systems that are proven in use in the bitumen road asphalt industry over a long period of time, and building on a very substantial background to ore emulsion, which actually sold over 60 million tons of fuel into the power generation market over a period of 10 plus years. Whilst a small team, we think a unique combination. So we've got the right combination of people working with us in the business, with emulsion fuel specialists, capital market specialists, and refinery and economic specialists. Top of that, we're actually a technology and know-how business, and we've got some very compelling IP and know-how, and that IP has been developed and is owned jointly between ourselves and our long-term partner Nourion, who we've been working with now for over 15 years. And in a number of areas, having Nourion behind you is really valuable. One is they operate globally, so we can be looking at opportunities in the global markets. And when it comes to protecting IP and know-how, it's much easier when you've got the might of Nourion behind you than it would be for ourselves as a small independent business. Now, for those of you who don't know QUADRISE very well, this next video gives you, we believe, a really good overview of our technology, how it works in around 2.5 minutes, and frankly, probably saves us 10 minutes of presentation time. So we think overall, even if you've seen it before, we always think it's a very good watch. Thank you very much.
Every year, the world uses $135 billion of fuel oil. This helps to generate electricity, power shipping, and support industry. Sustainable alternatives are still years away, so the world's finite resources should be used more efficiently, at a lower cost to us all. Since 2020, the new IMO environmental standards have meant big changes for global fuel oil. QUADRISE has developed MSAR, a synthetic fuel oil that's cheaper and cleaner. We process heavy oil residues into tiny droplets using proven emulsion technology. These are dispersed in water, which contains a very small amount of additives produced by our long-term partner, Nourion. The result is MSAR fuel. Fuel oil is normally made by blending the tar-like oil residues with distillates such as diesel and similar expensive distillate products, so it will flow. This results in a significant loss of revenue for refiners. But by using water and additives as a diluent, MSAR allows refiners to sell all of their distillate products at a premium, creating significant value for the refiner. This means MSAR can be sold at a lower price to consumers. MSAR is stored and transported using existing fuel oil infrastructure. It can be used interchangeably with fuel oil. And in less than 1 year, MSAR can pay back the investment. MSAR can be used in diesel engines and boilers. The micro-sized fuel burns cleanly and efficiently, with no black soot, and with typically 30% lower nitrous oxide and particulate emissions. MSAR offers refinery upgrades at minimal cost, with rapid payback, lower energy costs for consumers, a cleaner environment for us all, and an economical way to meet new environmental standards. QUADRISE is making innovative use of the world's finite resources. Change doesn't happen overnight, but our tiny droplets can make a world of difference.
I hope everyone found that helpful. For those of you who've seen it before, I think it always makes a good watch. And for those new to the business, we hope it's provided you with a very clear and simple definition of an overview of what we are as a business. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Jason to take you through most of the rest of this presentation.
Thank you, Mike. So in terms of how we access the market, we access the market via a number of different routes, both directly ourselves and via basic partners worldwide. In Morocco, where we are today, we are working with a guy called Yunus Mamar. In Saudi Arabia with the Al Khafra Group, JGC in Japan, notable others, including sort of Alcor, Redliner and Freepoint for the Americas. So we have a number of different partners around the world, which has obviously been very useful during this period where travel has been more restricted. Having said that, we have been progressing all of the projects that we've been working on remotely, and now obviously able to travel a little bit more extensively, albeit it's not as easy as it was, but it's still possible. A key project for us, where we had a pilot trial already initiated with everything ready to go at the end of Q1, and then was delayed obviously due to travel to site, is now due to progress this month. So the team are in Morocco to carry out the preparation work and complete the trial as we intend to do, and then pending success of that, then that's the precursor to larger scale commercial tests on kilns for a very significant chemicals and mining group who are an industrial consumer of fuel oil, and potentially customers that could keep one or two MSAR units operational at full capacity. The other project that we're working on to conclude a trial by the end of this year is in Utah in the US with Valcor initially, and now their JV with Tomco called Greenfield Energy. Again, agreements were signed towards the end of the beginning of this year, and that initiated the work that's now ongoing to prepare all the equipment, half of which is boxed up, ready to go. The other is ready to be shipped very, very soon. In the meantime, we're also due to receive samples from the actual Utah facility. So that is expected to be received when they actually start up the facility in November. And then that will kick off the lab work at QRF to make sure that we have the correct recipe for when we carry out the trial. And then that trial itself could lead to larger opportunities in that particular region. We know that Tomco and Greenfield are looking to expand the facilities for up to 10,000 barrels a day of oil, potentially more, depending on the other assets that are available as well in the area. So we believe that's a very exciting project for us on a low sulfur fuel, which is extremely heavy. And MSAR offers a very unique way of getting that to market. Other projects in Saudi Arabia, which we mentioned during the previous call, we are very active in the region to ensure that our presence is well represented in the region. We prepared a white paper that was issued earlier in the year, a few months back. We've since gone live with an Arabic version of the website as well, so that clients in that region can access the content in their own language, and we'll also be doing something similar in the Americas as well in Spanish. So that work is progressing with the main utilities there, as well as the other stakeholders, including the national oil company. In terms of the Americas, in Ecuador, we're carrying out briefings at the moment for the energy minister, as well as the national oil company there, and we're obviously looking to get a trial project underway and a trial agreement signed off with that particular client. There's a very, very good fit for MSAR in the refinery, with the ability to supply not only MSAR for refinery fuel, but also to supply utilities in the region, as well as export opportunities, which is obviously why Freeport are actively involved as well. And in Mexico, a similar project, albeit slightly behind the Ecuador project, but we're working with Redliner on a multi-client study or multi-refinery study for a large national oil company there, with obviously briefings for the energy sector. Both of these regions are very well suited for MSAR, obviously going through their own issues in terms of COVID, etc. But it's definitely a very exciting time to be pushing these projects forward for both these locations. In the global marine space, we're working with two major clients, which we mentioned before. One is the very large owner of container ships, and the other operates bulk ships, bulk vessels. So both of those clients have made major investments in scrubbers so they can utilise high sulphur fuel to get the maximum discount that MSAR could offer. And in parallel, we did look at the physical bunker supply, albeit we paused that during COVID. And we will review that obviously as things progress. And elsewhere, there's been a number of different collaboration opportunities that we've been discussing together with Neurion under the Carlyle wrapper, and also new initiatives underway in the Americas, working with a couple of guys who are energy and petroleum consultants. They're people who I used to work with in the oil emulsion business. Great guys, and we're reaching out to clients in certainly in Central and South America much more actively now through them. And also with Pacific Green Technologies, who are a large flue gas scrubber supplier, initially for marine, but they've also got a land-based, very exciting sort of land-based technology, and they're backed with a very large technology provider, which is Power China. So they are very nimble and fleet of foot. So we're looking at opportunities where we can combine to actually obviously initiate projects for both of us and both our benefits. And there are a number of activities that are ongoing on the BD side as well. One area where we're very excited about is the work that was initiated by our DI department during the beginning of lockdown. So we started looking at both expanding and enhancing our ESG message, because we were aware that through feedback from shareholders that the ESG message was being undersold. So we spent a lot of time repositioning that information for the website and for clients. But we also initiated an ESG activity to look at the possibility of combining biofuels or biofuel derivatives into MSAR with a view to producing basically an oil and water emulsion that could combine both the residue, the water, and a sustainable material that would still provide fuel savings, but could also lead to 20% or more reductions in CO2, which we believe would be a very compelling and interesting solution for the marketplace. I'm very pleased to report that we've had very good progress to date in that activity. A patent application is being prepared and will be submitted in the space of weeks. And for us, it's a game changer for both the marine and the power sectors. As this work continues, it opens up, both accelerates the discussions that we're having with existing clients, but opens up discussions with new clients as well, who are looking for solutions to reduce their carbon footprint in both of the marine and power sectors.
Thank you, Jason. And we'll come on and talk about this, but I cannot tell you how excited we are about the opportunities for Green MSAR. We think it's something which helps to underpin the sort of commercial development of the business substantially, and we hope to be in a position to provide further updates as we go through the rest of this quarter. I'm just going to go very briefly in terms of where we are on funding. As you know, we closed off funding in autumn of last year. We had an underpinning through the Bergen £2 million convertible. That enabled us to do a very substantial, fully underwritten open offer and a subscription, which together with the funding from Bergen gave us the funding at that point to actually enable us to move through to the end of this calendar year for our business development activities. Because of a combination of things, one, the proactive approach we've taken to cost management for a long period of time now, but particularly as we came into the start of 2020. But on top of that, the sort of negative impact of COVID in terms of reducing our business development travel quite substantially without having the same impact on our business development activities. And I think it's really important to draw that distinction. So we've had the benefit of reduced travel. I'm not going to say it's had no impact on us, but to the extent that we've been able to progress a number of activities actually in an accelerating way during the course of 2020 is, I think, great testament to the team and the way that they've progressed things to date, and our strategy of engaging with local partners where that's appropriate, because that has given us the ability to have that local presence in there when we couldn't physically get over there. So now we've got a runway through to mid Q2 2021. There are things that could happen that would mean that we might need new funds prior to that in terms of positive developments. But in terms of where we are on a normalized basis, we've got the runway through to mid Q2 2021 to enable us to develop further the business development and project initiatives that Jason has just been talking about. Just in terms of summarizing this now, we've got a solution to a global problem that works now, not in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, but now. It's proven, it's low cost, it's actually something that you can implement within 9 months. We think this, together with the already substantial economic environmental benefits that we get, will actually drive this forward. That's why we're so excited about the opportunity with Green MSAR, because on top of that, there are some very significant further advantage that we can see being delivered. So I think, because again, we've had these questions before, but it is about enabling a greener energy transition. We know that if you look forward probably 15 to 20 years, renewables are going to be the story, but actually there is going to be a huge use of fossil fuels between now and then. And we think it's incumbent on us to ensure that that's done in as clean a way as possible. And both existing MSAR and potentially in a much greater way, Green MSAR is really going to drive that forward, not just in the markets that we're currently looking to address, but in new potential markets as well. And that global pipeline of opportunities has presented us with, we think, the best possible platform for progressing to commercial revenues that, frankly, we've ever seen in the business. It's a testament to the hard work that's been put in by everyone in the business and all of our partners over quite a challenging year to date. But we think that's putting us in a very substantial and positive platform for future development during the course of the last quarter of 2020 and into the start of 2021 in a very positive way. And with that, we'd like to sort of formally close the presentation, but then open up to questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jason. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with the Q&A, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type your question and press send. But just while the company do take a few moments to review those investor questions submitted already, I would like to remind you that recording this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard on the Investor Meet Company platform. Lastly, before I hand back to Mike and Jason, I'd like to remind you, as they said, your feedback is very important to the company. So please do take a few moments to complete it post the webinar. You will be immediately redirected for the opportunity to provide feedback so the company can better understand your views and expectations. Mike, Jason, perhaps before we look at the questions being submitted today, we can run through some of the pre-submitted questions, of which you had a number ahead of this. Also, a couple that have come in, which I think sort of have just sort of bubbled to the surface that would be worth addressing as well. Perhaps we can start with the first one. Are we being paid for the Green MSAR research?
I'm going to let Jason talk in the main to this, but I think just to outline where we are at the minute, this is something that we've developed ourselves within the sort of RDI team. And what we're then looking to do is how do we get from some really positive results that we've seen at QRF to being able to demonstrate that this can be made at scale and that there is the demand for it out there in the marketplace. So we think it's incumbent on us to be undertaking this work. We can do it at relatively low cost. And actually, we just had a meeting to agree how that will be progressed. But with that, Jason, saying, I guess, no, we're not being paid for it. It's something that we think is a very worthwhile investment. But perhaps, Jason, for you to just give a bit of background about the sort of things that we'll be looking at doing.
Yeah, and I think it was a case of maximising the use of the resources in the best way. Obviously, during during the period of lockdown as well to get all his brains thinking about something new. Was very, very productive and has yielded some very interesting results today. I mean, in terms of what we're getting paid, there's no one externally paying for this at the moment. Obviously, the costs that are incurred and have been incurred would be permissible for recovery via R&D tax credits anyway, which is what we do on a yearly basis. And we're also looking at means of getting other grant funding as well from various different initiatives, both in the UK and in Europe. So there's a possibility there. Obviously, as the scale of testing increases, that's where we would look to get development partners involved from industry, from the industries that are obviously they're going to benefit from the use of a lower CO2 fuel. So that's where we would start bringing in research partners. But for now, the costs have been minimal, and the sort of sunk cost for the company so far anyway. But there's definitely interest in, obviously, in the next few phases.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Another one we've had actually come in here, and we've had a couple of questions on this, both pre-submitted and live, is Morocco. How long is the Morocco trial planned to take? Perhaps if I can just intertwine that with another one as well. Morocco, in the results, you mentioned the most recent discussions with the client have been highlighting the potential move to straight to trials on their commercial kilns. How does this differ from previous plans as outlined in the recent business update?
Well, I think you should hear this direct from Morocco. Jason.
Well, in terms of the first phase pilot trial, the plan is to get that carried out in the next few weeks. So we would expect that by the end of October, the trials are complete, providing everything progresses as we would expect. Obviously, why some of us are already in Morocco, making sure that that timetable is met. In terms of I guess in terms of some of the other activities that have happened and what's changed in terms of the next phase, what's changed a little bit since we announced, obviously, the Morocco agreement is that some of the work has already started on the commercial scale trials. So we're able to try and keep the program on track for the commercial trials by doing a lot of the engineering work in advance, so that the intention would be that after the pilot plant trial is completed and signed off by the client, that we're in a pretty good position to then look at two of the opportunities in the location or within the client's portfolio, where we know that there's a substantial demand for this type of fuel in their kilns.
Thanks, Jason. Next pre-submitted question we've got here is, please outline the types of feedstock that could be used with your proposed greener MSAR.
I mean, maybe if I take this, because it's not a technical response, we're in the process of actually getting into putting a patent application in. So we're not really going to be saying anything more about this until we've got the protections under that patent pending. But we do have a desire to ensure that shareholders are kept absolutely up to speed with this. So we would be looking to put in place some quite extensive PR and IR activities surrounding the sort of a more formal launch of Green MSAR. So it isn't we're never going to tell you, it's we can't tell you yet, we don't think it's commercially sensible for us to do so, but we will be putting something in place to give you a much clearer overview of Green MSAR, what the potential is, and why we're so excited. And Paul, could I perhaps ask you to ask that question from Paul G in relation to this, and I can cover that off at the same time as well?
Yeah, sure. Or with those ones coming through, happy for you to read those out as well. But...
yeah, actually, this is from Paul G, and I hope it's not a Paul G that we used to know from the business. But it says, Mike, you say you're very excited by Green MSAR, but you can appreciate shareholders, particularly long term, are becoming increasingly frustrated that we haven't been able to successfully become a sustainable business through the sale of regular MSAR. Should all resources not be focused on getting one of these projects finally over the line, given we've been unable to do so for the last decade? Well, Paul, I can appreciate that, and we understand that there is some frustration there from shareholders. I have to say, you should accept that we are frustrated by sometimes our lack of ability to get some of these things progressing as quickly as we would hope. But in terms of green MSAR, we really are not taking away anything from the work that we're doing to deliver our existing opportunities by looking at green MSAR. What we would absolutely say is we're adding to that, because it really gives something on top of what we're already delivering to those clients. So it's not detracting us from the work we're properly focused on in terms of the opportunities. And for example, with Jason being over there in Morocco at the minute, the work we're looking to do with Valcool later this year, or the work that we're looking to do in the marine sector. But we think it substantively adds to that. And we're doing it in a way that we certainly absolutely got the capacity to do that without adversely impacting our ability to drive, as you put it, normal MSAR.
Thanks, Mike, for jumping out. And feel free, as I say, we'll come on to perhaps some of the more live questions in a minute. Just jump in and read those out as you can. Next one we've got up here. In Utah, once the POSP MSAR trials are completed, would QUADRISE be willing to facilitate the POSP to produce MSAR on a commercial basis while the new 10K facility is being built? It'd be highly valuable as a commercial reference.
Jason?
Well, the answer is yes, of course. This is a potential for the Greenfield site, provided the partners are agreeable, and we can conclude suitable terms for the license, the equipment and the services that we'll be providing. But that's certainly the intent of shipping equipment there.
Thank you. Next one we have here is, are Bitumina's acquisitions of Strata Alfonso and Ninas a benefit to QUADRISE? If yes, how?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Bitumina have been making great strides. Bitumina is a partner of ours in Russia, but as a company, they've been making great strides. They've procured Stratura Asphaltos, which is the Petrobras bitumen arm. So they now have one of the largest providers in Brazil, and also they've taken over the shareholding of Ninas as well, who are based in Sweden, a very long-standing, reputable bitumen supplier to North Europe. So, Bitumina's access to bitumen feedstocks and heavy hydrocarbons, as well as obviously their ownership of a mill supplier, Dynematech, is very beneficial to us, and we're obviously in very regular discussions with Bitumina about specific opportunities where we can work together.
Thank you, Jason. Next one we have here. As your knowledge and experience in Morocco has increased, what is your view of the scale of the opportunity with the chemicals and mining company and Morocco more widely? I think I know who that one's going to be answered to, Jason.
Yeah, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had, as discussions progress with the client, and they've opened up about other opportunities. We certainly think that they're very willing to evaluate and test MSAR and a number of other applications. That's obviously very encouraging for us. In terms of wider opportunities in the country, in Morocco, there are other energy sources being deployed as well. There's a coal-fired power plant down the road. They're burning other fuels. There's a lot of renewable energy going in as well. Having said that, fuel oil is consumed in the country. And we have an agent who is the ex CEO of the local utility company, ONE. So we're very well placed in this particular region to maximise all of the opportunities that are available, both here and also, if things progress in Morocco, there are other countries in Africa which would benefit from a lower cost fuel alternative.
That's great. Next one we have here is, please provide examples of the type and magnitude of opportunities within the Carlyle group.
Are you okay if I take this, Jason? I think,
yeah.
As you know, Neuron came about because Carlyle bought the former specialty chemicals business out of AkzoNobel, and they've also been quite clear about their desire over a 3 to 5 year period to see that properly come back onto the market, either in Europe or the US. They've also got other holdings in the sector as well, and we have, at the instigation actually of Neurion, had some discussions with Neurion, a third party, and ourselves about how we could better cooperate to frankly maximize the revenue opportunities and the profit opportunities for all parties. And obviously that that becomes a somewhat different conversation when both of those parties are part of the same overall investment group than if they're entirely separate parties. So, nothing substantive at this stage, but we think it's indicative of the interest and the support that we get from Nourion, that they've actually taken it on for this is something for them to progress alongside us. So, nothing to actually update you on at the moment, but we think it's a very helpful indication of the interest and the importance that Nourion place on us as a business.
Thanks, Mike. Next question here relating to Japan. So relating to the initiative in Japan with JGC, if proven to be an effective solution, is this aimed at numerous refineries or aimed at a specific refinery looking to upgrade to CHP and save distillate self-consumption? Do you see this as a medium or long-term target?
Jason?
Yeah, so we're looking at multiple refineries in Japan that could utilise MSAR. The intention is to reduce refinery fuel consumption through the displacement of diesel or distillate but that distillate is being used to dilute down some very, very heavy residue. We see this as a medium-term opportunity. The projects involved could be completed within 12 to 18 months, but that still requires a decision to be made by the refinery company that's discussing that as well, together with their partner JGC.
Thanks, Jason. Another question here, Utah. Has the Utah shale oil been tested at QRF yet for its suitability for MSAR? And who are the prospective end users of the finished product, whether on-site or off-site, and what's the capacity?
Mm-hmm. So, as stated in the final results, we're still awaiting samples. That won't be available until the site has started. And we know that we believe that Greenfield are planning to undertake that work in November, so we're fully expecting to get samples actually from the facility, which is important in November to provide the guarantees that we need to complete the test and obviously supply the equipment. The work in terms of prospective end users, that work is still ongoing. The main focus of Greenfield, frankly, is to get the facility ready and up and running. So that's occupying some of their time, but we're working together with them and with some of their other potential partners in that region to look at various different markets for the produced fuel, which may also provide another opportunity for green MSAR as well. Now that seems to be progressing positively, and it's also worth mentioning as well, obviously, that this material from Utah is a low sulfur product, so that opens up other markets for us. And I think there was a question with regards to Maersk, who are obviously a large low sulfur fuel consumer, and is one of the potential companies that could benefit from a low sulfur, high viscosity fuel in MSAR form.
Thanks, Jason. Our next one here is relating to KSA. So has the proposed presentation to the KSA Energy Minister been given yet? And if so, is there agreement to progress plans, or have plans changed?
I think on that one, no, we're continuing, as we've outlined, a major push in the region, which was sort of accelerated by the production of the white paper back in August of this year, making that available in both English and Arabic. And as Jason has outlined previously, and that was then followed up very, very shortly thereafterwards with basically the bulk of our website now being available in Arabic as well. There are no specific updates to provide in relation to that meeting, but I would say that we are progressing all those avenues diligently now.
Perfect, thanks, Mike. Only got a few more to go, and we'll perhaps move on to some of the live questions. If a refinery is not to be part of the planned Lono trials, how exactly would MSAR production at terminals be set up, and where would the residue source come from?
So in terms of the Lono trials, there are a number of options that we've looked at to produce the fuel for the Lono trials. Some of those some of those involve refineries, but some of them also don't. We have the possibility of utilising bitumen terminals as well, but you need to have a facility that's capable of handling high viscosity products. So that's always the challenge for carrying out trial activities, but it's something that we've obviously done before.
Great. Another question with regard to Utah here. If MSAR can be produced from the Utah oil sands at a competitive cost, as suggested by Greenfield and Petrotech, do you foresee an opportunity to form a JV given the potential volume of MSAR that could be produced within Utah?
Obviously, our absolute focus at the moment is ensuring that we're in a position to support the testing at the Petrotech facility, following the commissioning by Greenfield, which that will provide the samples that are needed to basically be sent to QRF for our confirmation testing, but also to get very accurate data on the fuel properties as well. So work on the MMU and the various modules is close to completion, which will be, as I mentioned before, actually one of the units is actually boxed up, ready to go, and the other is very soon to be ready. So they're ready to be. That fits with the schedule that Greenfield have set us. In terms of a JV with Greenfield, we've not discussed this in detail, but it could certainly be one of the opportunities to monetize the asset and get the benefit, obviously, of our marketing experience.
A couple of questions here just further in Morocco that are kind of together. Providing successful rollout of MSAR with the Morocco client, what other end users are being targeted in Morocco? Also, with commercial rollout in Morocco, is there a plan to produce MSAR within Morocco? And if so, what will be the preferred method of production? Could the tar sands in Morocco be a potential future target similar to the Utah project?
Okay, so at the moment, our main focus in Morocco is ensuring that we can deliver the trial and the forthcoming pilot trial, but also the commercial trials for our major clients. Production in Morocco is an option, and I think there was a question somewhere else that's been submitted as well in terms of where was the fuel made for the testing here. The fuel for the testing that's about to be initiated during the coming weeks, that was made in QRF. And we have the capability of making reasonable sized volumes of trial fuel actually at QRF before we need to go and install facilities out of country. So it depends on the scale of the trial, but production in Morocco is an option, and it's something that we are exploring. Refinery production is generally better commercially, and obviously that puts you in good shape for commercial supply after the trial, which is obviously an advantage. Unfortunately, the local Samir refinery, where MSAR would have been a great fit. In fact, we had a project before the refinery shut down that was about to be initiated. That's not an option at the moment, and neither really is our Morocco tar sands. They've not really been evaluated in great detail because there are better options available, refineries in the surrounding region.
Thank you, Jason. Last couple just before we go into the live questions. What are the main obstacles now delaying agreement on Lono trials?
Do you want to answer that, Mike?
Yeah, I think at this stage it's probably fair to say with both of the parties, it's just been the impact that they've seen on their businesses through COVID-19 and how that has really got them to focus on today operational issues. Those discussions are still continuing. We're still hopeful that we can actually progress those discussions during the course of this final quarter and get those concluded. But they've got a lot on their plate at the minute, but we are still sort of hopeful that we can progress those. And I've seen another couple of questions on this that if I can perhaps pick up. One is, do we get any credit for any of the Lono that we undertook with Maersk? Almost certainly not. But also one thing to note is that what we're seeking to do with these trials is actually get them undertaken on MAN engines, not Wärtsilä, which is what the Maersk trial was. And part of the rationale for that is that if you look at the global market share, it's MAN are around 70% of the market and Wärtsilä 30%. So actually doing a Lono trial on a MAN engine opens up more than 2.5 times the market that it does for a Wärtsilä engine.
Thanks, Mike. We have got 2 more left to go. With the Utah project, how close is Valcor to finding potential customers for the produced fuel?
Yes, I mean, in terms of the Valcor or the joint venture Greenfield, I mean, their main focus at the moment is to commission their facility and establish proof of concept for that technology in that particular plant. Given that the heavy, sweet nature of the oil, the crude oil, and its attractiveness to market, obviously final customers need to be found, but there are a lesser concern. We believe that this material will definitely find a home in the fuel markets.
That's great. And the final pre-submitted question: what will be the timing of first revenues from any of the projects under a reasonable best case scenario?
Right. This is one which people are going to pay a lot of heed to in the future. So I need to be. We're being very careful about what we say, but within the context of what has been said there, with the current projects we've got, there is an opportunity of seeing these progress to commercial revenues in the second half of calendar 2021. That would be subject to those clients making a rapid decision on the conclusion of the work that is being carried out on test trials or substantive studies that we're working at. And we're putting a huge amount of effort into achieving this as well. What we can't legislate for at the moment is what the potential impact of current and potentially future COVID-19 restrictions might have on that. But I'd like to emphasize we are in what we think is a very fortunate position of having a broader range of opportunities that have been taken further than I think we've ever had in our history. And I know certain shareholders will find that a little frustrating for that to be repeated, but absolutely that's the case for us, that we don't think we've ever been in a better position with a broader spread of opportunities across a number of marketplaces, which we can, on successful delivery of the next stages, progress to commercial revenues at a pace, we believe.
That's great. Thank you, guys. That concludes the pre-submitted questions, and it's woven a few of the live ones as well. But perhaps if you had a moment to review them, I
was just one that I sort of quite like to pick up is one from Lionel T, which could we get a professional PR company to promote green MSAR? I hope there isn't an inference there that you don't think our PR is professional, because we put a lot of effort into it. But we will absolutely be working with our PR advisors, and in principle, those are two. We've got FTI who work with us on general media and social media, and we work very closely with a design agency called Invicom, who have actually produced the animated video that you saw there, and have produced the white papers as well in terms of their look and feel. So we will absolutely be doing that. We've only got the right chance to launch this once, and we're going to make sure it's done in a professional and engaging way.
There were a couple of questions. Sorry, there were a couple of questions on green MSAR that I could pick up.
Yeah.
All of that makes sense. One was from Ian J in terms of how is green MSAR being tested. So the testing that we've done in the lab so far has been blending some of the biofuel derivatives into conventional MSAR in different ways, in terms of putting the biofuel actually into the residue and then blending that with water and comparing that with just putting the biofuel in the water phase and blending that with the residue. So there's a number of different techniques and tests that have been carried out, which are obviously part of the patent that's been done. All of this is being tested in our lab facilities, and there's obviously very good videos online in terms of the sort of testing that we do, but nothing specific to green MSAR as yet. But it's using our existing blending equipment to produce MSAR fuels with obviously a lower CO2 content in the fuel. And we're also using the test facilities to then look at the stability of that fuel, as we do with conventional MSAR, so looking at static stability in tubes, static tubes, and also look at dynamic stability in our pump rigs, which were developed together with the major OEMs and people like Maersk to fully thrash the fuel and make sure that it's fit for purpose in the applications that we think are viable for the fuel. And there's a question from Steve Y in terms of, are we looking at biofuel residues? And the answer is yes on that one. So
could I perhaps there are a couple here that I think are worth picking up together, actually. One from Mark S. Mike, our cash runway lasts for a little more than 6 months, and you've said the next round of funding will be viewed as very favourable terms to shareholders. Is that still the case, or at this stage should we now expect a repeat of the Bergen funding, which in hindsight is far from being favourable? And will you achieve your short-term project goals to support the share price before the next round of funding? I think, first of all, in terms of our cash runway, yeah, we've got till mid-Q2 2021. I think in terms of what I've said about future funding, we would make sure that we put that over in a way which is accessible to all of our shareholders. We've always hugely valued and supported our long-term retail shareholders. We've, I think, demonstrated that through the use of suitable mechanisms to ensure that they're able to participate in fundraisings. In terms of Bergen, I'm going to actually dispute the comment that Mark made there. I don't think that was unfavourable for us at all. To be honest, if we hadn't have done that, I'm not sure we'd have got away the open offer that was fully underwritten and the subscription. So it's absolutely fundamental to it. Has it caused some sort of dilution? Yes. But I think it's been on terms which have enabled the business to progress to where it is now. And without them, we would not have been able to do that. So I absolutely stand by that. And are we in a position to say that we will achieve our short-term project goals to enable us to support a future fundraising during prior to mid-Q2 2021? That's absolutely what we are focused on, and we're going to have to make that work. Yes. A related one from Paul G. Do you believe we'll be in a position, project-wise, that we won't need to draw down on the second Bergen tranche come New Year? I'm going to answer your question in a slightly different way, Paul, because again, I think us having access to Bergen funding is really important. Whether we choose to or need to use it or not is something else, but having access to that thing is really important. But absolutely, we will not need to draw down that Bergen funding ahead of us having to look more generally at fundraising by mid-Q2 2021. And Lionel, you've come back with trying to get green MSR mentioned in National Editorial Times, Economist, etc. Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something where, because it is new, because it's different, we've got more opportunity to do that. I have to say, FTI have been working really hard on this, but it's quite challenging to get us as a smaller business up in front of some of these things. But I think we see green MSR as something that really gives us a chance to shine, and we will be ensuring that FTI put all their effort into getting this splashed on a mainstream stage, not just a trade publication stage.
Mm-hmm. There was a question coming from Richard J. Jason, have you been able to access the Morocco plant? Are there any restrictions in place? And is a full team there with all the equipment? So the full team that are required to carry out the pilot trial are in place. They're in Morocco. All the equipment is ready. The fuel is here. So in terms of accessing the Morocco plant, there are lots of restrictions in place. I think we mentioned that in a previous call. You may not be aware of, but so obviously to fly to Morocco, you need to have COVID tests done. We also need to isolate when we get to Morocco, which we're doing at the moment. We also have to have further COVID tests again, a medical. So yeah, they're being very, very particular. And then you're basically restricted to a particular area on site as well. So they are extremely stringent on COVID regulations to access the site, which obviously is a very prudent thing to do at the moment with a facility as large as theirs. So the answer is yes.
Another couple that have come through is just someone sort of not a question but a statement, and again we did refer to this last time. Primary bid, that is definitely something that we'll look at. Whether we use it or not, I'm not going to say, but it's certainly a platform that we will look at. And there've been a couple of questions regarding Maersk, and I think it's worthwhile. One of them was is there still any benefit in that earlier work we did with Maersk? And absolutely yes, there is, because it proved all sorts of things to us as a business and to current and potential customers that we can do this. But in terms of are we talking to them at present? No, we're focused on talking to those companies that we've outlined there, which are a major bulker and a major container shipping company, who have actually positively engaged with us. Would we talk to them at some point in the future? Absolutely. But our focus at the minute is with these two companies that are engaging positively with us.
There's a question, again, it's a green MSAR one, sorry, I seem to be picking the green MSAR ones, but there was a question from Mark S. With regards to green MSAR reducing SOx and CO2 as well as NOx and PM. It asks, will the SOx be reduced enough to allow it to be used without scrubbers? Would it be a low sulfur MSAR, or would scrubbers still be necessary to use it? It is not a vague answer deliberately, but it depends. The SOx, we see certain applications where it can be very beneficial to reduce the SOx down to levels that would enable then the fuel to be utilised without scrubbers in certain applications. So and we're looking at projects in the Americas where that level of reduction opens up opportunities to avoid having to invest in the scrubber potentially. Low sulfur MSAR really requires a lower sulfur residue. Having said that, and that's it. But there are areas and applications such as with the greenfield application where that could be complementary with that particular project as well. To obviously open up a market for something that's new in Utah.
There's one here from Daniel B, which is there a probability of success figure that you're working on for the Morocco trial? And I think if we're talking about this initial trial on the pilot facility, I'd say on that one, the figure is 100%. We've got absolute confidence that that part of the trial will work. When we start looking at the other ones, I'm not going to give you an absolute figure, but given the sorts of loads that we're talking about and the sort of uses, we don't see these as particularly challenging trials. We've got to do them because it's important for the client to see this, but from a company perspective, they're not particularly challenging demands in terms of the applications. So we've got a very high degree of confidence in our ability to conclude them successfully. In terms of moving on from the first to the second one, that's really going to be around Jason and the team being able to get access to the relevant parts of the site when they're there. And that we don't know at the minute whether that's something that the client is comfortable with. But the focus at the minute is getting that first pilot phase trial completed, which is the key gateway to moving on to the next stages.
Guys, just the time as well as we're coming up to the hour, just if there's any other questions that you can cut through.
I don't know whether you want to pick up the one at the bottom, Jason, from Nigel B on patent application.
In terms of when we expect to hear, we've done a very detailed search already, Nigel, with regards to prior art in this particular field. We believe that from the detailed searches that we've done to date, we've got some very unique prior art, which would mean that the patent submission should go through relatively quickly. Having said that, never say never in the patent world. So it depends what else may be uncovered during during our initial submission. In terms of timing, where we can provide a little bit more detail when we do the Green MSAR launch after the patent's been submitted, but it will follow the usual timing of any sort of UK patent, which would then transfer to a PCT application.
And I think just one also to pick up, Jason, Michael H, just to be clear, does Green MSAR complement or replace MSAR? We see it as something that's complementary. For certain customers, it could replace it. For others, it will be, they may still have an interest in pursuing a normal MSAR route rather than a Green MSAR route. But there are some particular applications that we think have got really fantastic opportunities for a Green MSAR to be a real game changer for us and for our customers.
There's a question from Janine asking if I'm going to go to Utah as well. At the moment, that is not confirmed. Although some of the team with me, maybe. But yeah, we obviously we review which teams need to be where. Obviously we're sensitive that the teams need to be split up in two as well, potentially. So it may be that I don't travel to Utah, but we're very well covered with other experts to complete that trial if needed, or as needed rather.
Yeah, and Paul G, absolutely, we'll send you a personalised polo when we get.
And I think on that note, Mike, Jason, we've just got up to I think you have addressed the vast majority of those questions, if not all those questions you can from investors. Of course, the company will review all questions submitted today, and we'll publish those answers on the Investor Meet Company platform where appropriate to do so. Just to wrap up, Mike, perhaps if I could just ask you just to say a couple of words just to wrap before we redirect investors for feedback, please.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you very much to all the team at Investor Meet Company for enabling this. We think it's a great platform for us. Thank you most of all, though, to everyone that both submitted a question online before and during the course of this, and for those that just wanted to sort of sit there and listen to us as well. Thank you very much for your time. It's much appreciated. If you do have any feedback for us, please do submit it. We do read every piece of it. We're constantly trying to get better at what we do, and we can only do that if we hear from you what works and what doesn't work. But thank you very much. As you know, the next scheduled update is after our closed AGM on the 27th of November 2020 at 12:30. And if we don't have anything in advance of that, we're very much looking forward to welcoming as many of you as we can to that meeting. And that's our way of actually saying, whilst the AGM is going to be closed, what we don't want to do is think that we're trying to close ourselves off to questions from our shareholders. Absolutely the opposite. And Investor Meet Company will be the perfect platform for us to demonstrate that. And we look forward to being able to speak to you again in a little over a month's time.
Yeah, thanks all. Thanks for the good wishes.
That's fantastic. I think polo shirts and splitting Jason in half. Thank you to everyone. Mike, Jason, thanks for updating investors today. Could I ask investors not to close this session? As the team have said, it would be great to get your feedback. You will be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback. If you've accessed the meeting via the website, that feedback page will appear in front of you a couple of seconds after the end of the webinar. If you've accessed via the link sent in the email, again, just wait a few seconds, you'll be sent to the login page. Just simply log in and submit your feedback. It's much appreciated by the company and the team. On that note, on behalf of QUADRISE Fuels International PLC and Investor Meet Company, I'd like to thank you again for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's event. Thank you and goodbye.